Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about Gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co-host, David.
Hey everyone.
And this week we are discussing buyer's remorse in Gacha games. So, Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so to explain the concept of buyer's remorse first, for those that are maybe unfamiliar with the term, this isn't something that's exclusive to the gaming, you know, knowledge base or the gaming vernacular. So buyer's remorse can be basically anything that somebody purchases in, some type of transaction that they regret, shortly thereafter, whether it be clothing, whether it be a meal, whether it be any product or service, whatever it is, and then whoever purchased it, right, ends up kind of feeling bad about it, maybe wishing they hadn't done it. Most commonly in gotcha games, we see buyer's remorse maybe when we spend money on a banner, and we go to pull the banner character, and we either don't get the 5-star character, or if we get a 5-star character, we miss, or we lose our 50-50, right? And those are probably the most common instances of it in gotcha gaming. But anybody can relate to having buyer's remorse, I'm sure, with anything. And so for today's topic, where I wanted to go with this, Steve, is talk about maybe any instances of buyer's remorse that you and I have experienced in gotcha games, whether they be Hoyoverse or outside the Hoyoverse realm. And then also maybe some tips about maybe how to keep yourself from getting buyer's remorse, or maybe what to focus on in games so that you don't even really increase your odds of having buyer's remorse, right?
Mhm.
So I guess we'll just go ahead and start with our own experiences and what we have, and we can bounce around in different games. I'll start as an example since I wanted to talk about this today. And for me, I've had buyer's remorse in a couple of games,
Mhm.
and it's really funny because in gotcha games, the games that I end up playing for a very long time, I tend to spend little to no money on. Um, and then I've actually spent a non-zero amount of money on games that ended up being short-lived in my library, and
Mhm.
sometimes even short-lived in everybody's library because they EOS'd very quickly.
Yeah.
And so the two games that come to mind, one was this old mecha girls game. It was called, I think, Goddess Kiss or something like that.
Okay.
Um, it had kind of a strategy. If you know me, you know I really like strategy games and not just your typical auto battler. I like a little bit of strategy, even if it's an auto battler.
Mhm.
And that one had some of it with grid-based stuff. And I think I spent maybe like $10 on some pack or something like that to help me get through an event to unlock something or whatever for some of the units I was using. Well, I think I ended up quitting that game not even a month later. And, I was like, man, I cannot believe I spent 10, $15 on it or whatever it was. And it was all just for the cheapy, you know, finish this level of the event that was going on.
Yeah.
And then another game that I spent money on, not as much, it was like the $2 beginner. Um, I always loved the art style of, I think it was called Valiant Force.
Mhm.
And because they did, there's Valiant Force, there's Valiant Force 2, and then there was another game they did that had the same art style. And all of those games tend to, unfortunately, not last very long before they EOS. And so I bought the beginner pack for like $2. And so it gave you their SSR, one of the SSR characters.
Mhm.
And then the game, I don't even think the game lasted 4 months, 5 months before it ended service, or maybe it did end of service at 5 months.
It
Those are
didn't make it the
definitely,
year.
yeah, it definitely didn't make it the year. I don't even think it made it the half year. But those are definitely two examples that come to mind in terms of buyer's remorse that I've experienced in gotcha games. It was me buying something in a game that I ended up not playing for very much longer, but a game like Genshin or Honkai Star Rail I've been playing now for years. And in Star Rail I haven't spent any money on, but Genshin, I think I spent $40 over the course of the 4+ years.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't have buyer's remorse on that because I still play the game and still enjoy the game and in it for the story. Uh,
Okay.
but it's just funny how I've had those games, played those the longest, and so it averages what, maybe $2 a year between the two games
Yeah.
essentially. But some crummy game I played for 3 months, I spent $20 on. Like, uh,
Yeah.
What about
Uh,
you, Steve? Any buyer's remorse stories jump to mind for you?
um, a couple. If I'm being honest, there are a couple that kind of jump out to me as like, wow, really kind of kicking myself for doing that. I do have a tendency, um, to if I am playing a gotcha game and I put more than 3 days into it. So, if I'm going to be playing it for more than 5 hours or more than 3 days, I'll typically pick up at least the beginner pack. Since my sense of fairness towards the devs is that, you know what, they put in enough work that they were able to interest me long enough that usually the somewhere between $2 to $5 packs, that's a reasonable ask. Like I got $5 worth of entertainment out of that. Like to use the old movie comparison, going to the movies used to run what about like $10, $15 for about 2 hours of entertainment. So, if you can beat a movie in regards to, value for money, okay, fine. I'm willing to give them that, assuming that there's enough content there to actually make it worthwhile. Um, so I'll typically do that. There have been a couple that I've been kicking myself that, looking back on, it's like, probably shouldn't have spent on that one. The Disgaea one, I dropped a little bit of money on to get some characters that I liked from that game. That one was
In
probably not the
fairness to
best.
Disgaea, you are a big Disgaea fan. I think that was an IP that's a favorite of yours.
Correct. Yeah, that one I was getting more because I wanted the character. Like I was pulling for the character, not necessarily for like meta or what have you. It was still one that, all these years later, I could have had that $20 back and bought in a carton of eggs now or something. So not super big as far as disappointment goes. I would say most of my disappointment isn't so much on a financial like swiping, it's on spending pools. So, or spending draws, whatever, on certain characters that just ended up sitting on the bench. And that, at the time I was like, yeah, okay, I'm super into. And then they just never really coalesced into anything. Um, for a Hoyoverse example, Sparkle is one of those characters that, I pulled for, and I mainly got her for Jink, if I'm really being honest, for my Lightning Lord, and he just it, she unfortunately has dropped off. She's just not really been able to keep up, and even the Lightning Lord himself has been rather, he hasn't been able to make it 2 years into the game. So there are a number of early pulls that I did during the first year of Honkai that I kind of looking back on, it's like, yeah, I didn't really get value for quote unquote money there. I didn't have as, an immediate regret. That's more hindsight 2020. Um, I guess in a more immediate, Kokomi was one that I had an immediate buyer's remorse when I did those pulls, but I eventually came around on that one. So I don't know if we're gonna count Kokomi on that one or not.
You had the immediate, yeah, you had the
Yeah,
immediate buyer's remorse, like what have I done? But then I think it panned out over the course of time, so you were ultimately all right there. I think looking at Hoyoverse games, yeah, if I reflect on my own accounts and characters that I pulled for that, now looking back, it's like, man, I kind of have some remorse because I never fully got to build a team around them, or it just never developed for whatever
yeah,
reason. I think the character for me in Star Rail would probably be Topaz and Numby. Would probably be the character that I for that ended up not really building so much around. There was a moment when I was working towards that type of follow-up team, but with the development of new characters coming into play, and like so Adventurine
yeah,
and Jade and the Herda, Topaz doesn't really have a place in that particular team composition so much anymore. And so there's a little bit of buyer's remorse there, but I really liked Topaz the character, the fact that she had a meme as a pet essentially with the stonks
yeah,
cutscene. That was hilarious to me. I thought, good on you developers. Well, good on them. Yeah, they got me, and,
yeah.
and I ended up not really using her so much. Well, actually, never really at all. I never really used her. There was, I guess, the biggest peak in interest for me for her was when Dr. Ratio came out. But yeah, again, it never really fully developed.
Yeah.
Um, and in Genshin, trying to look back on a character that I meet that I have buyer's remorse on, that's tough. I guess if I had to pick one limited banner character, I have buyer's remorse on, and it's not, and I don't really even have. I would say I don't even think I really have buyer's remorse on her, because I do enjoy the character. She carried me through a lot of uh, in Koinonia and that area, that would be Eula. I
Mm.
guess if I had to pick one off the top of my head, but I really enjoy Eula's playstyle. It's just unfortunately I think it's more of a case of, like we've talked about in our mini series with the elements. Cryo and her type of damage and playstyle don't really have a huge place in terms of speed run,
Mm.
like in Spiral Abyss. But I still love the character. Very elegant attack, everything like that. I love it. But from a practical standpoint, I guess that would be it. Um, and and I've done better like about spending. I don't do the same thing that you do with the movie theater uh, reference there. I tend to stick to be free to play, though. I guess saying that and not being like, oh, I haven't spent money on Gacha in X number of years. I did recently get back into Pokemon trading cards with my son,
Mm.
and so the nostalgia factor for him and some enjoyment for him, a little hobby for us to do. So I guess that's where my Gacha addiction is kind of manifested in real life. So I'm spending money, just not on virtual Gacha stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as someone who's also gotten back into Magic the Gathering cards and so forth, yeah, they can get you.
But but even beyond pulling for characters, there are other instances of times when I think players can have buyer remorse in the game, and that's just from the various shops and spending various currencies that you
Hmm.
earn in the game. And what I mean by that is let's say whatever residue you get from pulling on banners, and then you have that to go spend in the shop for whether it be a 5-star light cone or W engine, depending on, like I said, ZZZ versus Star Rail or something like that. Or you can use it on leveling materials, or you can use it to just straight up buy more pulls. And I was in an instance with my Zenless on Zero account where I was trying to pull for Bernice back when her banner was rerunning. There was some synergy with her and Evelyn, as
Hmm.
I'm trying to build a cohesive, synergistic team. And I was like her banner was coming to an end, and I was just short on the currencies. Like I said, I'd just gotten back into the game, and it's like, well, do I just miss Bernice and then get maybe the next round of banner characters that pop up, and then I'll be able to buy, a W engine from the shop? And I ended up caving and spending the currency to buy more pulls to guarantee Bernice because I was on my guarantee on the pity. And while that was great and all, I think if I had known a little bit more, I could have grinded some of the events or things to actually get the currency I needed, and then ultimately saved that the shop currency to then get a W engine that better fit maybe Bernice or maybe some other character that I'm trying to build up. So those leveling materials, those skill materials that are in that store, I think that can be a pitfall that players fall into, having fallen into that myself in Zenless Zone Zero here most recently. Uh, there to me, it's just a piece of advice to folks that are out there that are maybe dealing with this or thinking about this. It's like at the end of the day, these games are ultimately single player games, and there's no rush necessarily outside of your own goal of what you want to do. And so you don't need to expedite buying those materials if it's going to slow down the long run of getting maybe a 5-star weapon or something. And so that's something I need to. I told myself, after that moment and after I was feeling that way. But what about you, Steve? Are there any other pitfalls that you see in the gotcha games, or maybe
Well,
whether it be in Hoyoverse or outside of Hoyoverse?
I do think that you brought up a good point with the shop and basically burning pools early and going like, okay, well, I'm going to spend functionally on more pools now instead of saving up for those W engines or so and so forth, like those potential guarantees. Um, And I'm as guilty of that as the next person of burning through those. Another one that I've occasionally regretted is especially when they give you a this is a guaranteed character type thing. Like after 400 pulls, you'll get the guaranteed whoever. Um, Standard banner is more of what I'm sorry, kind of all over the place. For the standard banner, if you do like 300 pools, you get to pick from a roster of the
Right.
standard banner. There's no need to spend pools on getting access to that. It can be tempting. I'm guilty of that as much as the next person. Um, but yeah, that's one that I've fallen into before is
That's a
wasting pools like
that's a
that.
great point, great tip. Yeah, for those games where they have the standard banner app and you get a selector after 400 pulls or whatever it was that Star Rail did, where you could choose from, Himiko or Welt or Geralt or whatever his name is, or Bronya or whatever. It's amazing
Mhm.
how the meta has shifted when
Yeah.
Geralt was like the pick and then it was Bronya. Now it's like Himiko. Anyway, or Girls Frontline 2 when they introduced that on the global server back in February. I know that was a big deal. Yeah, there's no reason to rush that, and you shouldn't be spending your in-game current as a low spender or a free-to-play player. You really, yeah, shouldn't be spending that currency on the standard banner. You should be saving that up for the limited banner characters. Because at the end of the day, those standard banner characters and weapons are ultimately going to come home, whether it be through the standard banner or the losses of 50/50s that are inevitably going to come to us, right? So that's a great point though on that.
So that would be my piece of advice there. The other is the obvious stuff as well as like, hey, don't spend money you don't have. Budgeting is something all of us have to do. So
And I think too it comes back to what are you wanting to get out of the game, right? So
yeah,
you really have to have that a clear intent in mind with what your goal is for the game, both in terms of what's important in terms of progression for you, what's your timeline, and what are you really focusing on. So, like for me, Genshin has really shifted to I'm interested in the story, where they're going to go, like Maya, as we get closer and closer to that point in the story. And so it's really shifted away from, grinding out Spiral Abyss and 36 starring, Spiral Abyss. Uh, Shifting away from partaking in every single event that pops up that comes along. It's just like, no, I'm more interested in the lore and the story and like character quests. Not necessarily the hangouts per se, but like the
yeah.
actual character quests, and then the Archon quests, and that's kind of been my focus. So anything character wise that comes out, I'm budgeting myself and my account resources
Mhm.
towards characters I'm interested in and not necessarily things that are going to help me clear the abyss so much faster because I'm not trying to do that as much so anymore. Whereas my goal in Star Rail is a little bit different. My goal in Star Rail, I do want to be clearing things. Of course, the story there too,
Yeah.
right? But I I am trying to push end game content and apocalyptic shadows and get those done and get pure fiction done and
Mhm.
MOC get that all done and as many stars and as high score as possible. And so there's slightly different goals. So that means like in Star Rail, I'm paying more attention to unofficial news and
Mhm.
official news for characters so I can budget a roadmap and maybe pre-farm for characters and start pre-farming where I can for not only the materials but the artifact grind. Whereas in Genshin, like for these last two banners,
Mhm.
uh, I didn't even know which characters were coming out. I was just like, oh, they look cool. Or when we had the Cloud Retainer rerun banner, I didn't know she was coming up. Just knew she was a character I was interested in getting, and it was a pleasant surprise when she popped up. But I didn't pre-farm for her anything, and now
Mhm.
I've farmed her up pretty good. I'm really enjoying my her play style and team I made.
Yeah.
It's making domains great again.
But well, and I think you brought up an interesting point, which is level of interest as far as like budgeting for the future, where I think there is potential information. I don't want to say overload, but there's an informational aspect as well that I don't want to say we need to pay attention to, but that can lead to buyer's remorse, where a lot of times I find that I can become, I can get buyer's remorse from okay, I went all in on this character, but next patch or the patch immediately after, oh no, there's this other character that's really cool that I liked and wished I had saved for them. So, there's a level of informational awareness that you need to have in that regard. That, looking to the future can help relieve some of that by budgeting things out, planning out, being aware of what's coming down the pipeline, instead of kind of, for lack of a better term, shooting from the hip,
Well,
and so forth.
you just reminded me, and if I can go back, 15 minutes ago in the conversation
Mhm.
and revise my buyer's remorse character in Genshin, not Eula. Honestly, it's now probably now that I've really been able to sit here and think about it, probably Malvika. If I'm being honest, I I, I haven't even built her. There's not a team synergy that goes with her because, like I said, I pulled her because of the hype around her because she did look cool and she was supposed to be awesome. And again, they don't make bad Archons. But in reality, she's sitting at like level 40 on the account, not geared up at all. Not I don't even have the materials to level her to 90 if I wanted to. And the fact that I pulled Cloud Retainer after her and I built Cloud Retainer just kind of shows kind of to what you said, like, oh, I went all in for this character, and then oh, there was another character like right after that that I don't have resources to pull for anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what ultimately happened was the missing on Jolene when her banner was up, missing her 50/50 and not being able to get the guarantee. And then having to save up then ultimately for Malvika. I was like, yes, Malvika, but there was a synergy there that I missed out on. And so because of that, and because I'm not really pulling for any other Natlan characters, I wasn't interested in them. The team synergy just isn't there. So similar to Topaz in Star Rail, there's just not a team fit with Malvika anymore. She's just going to sit on the account as a checkbox for the Archon collection.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if
my apologies to you, but it's Malvika.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm in the same boat as you are in that regard, where I do agree. I think Mavica was is a character I regret as well. I don't think Mavica is bad.
Yeah. This isn't
Uh,
a we're saying she's a bad character remotely at all. I
yeah,
believe she's still very meta,
yeah.
especially with some other Natlan synergies.
It's more that she unfortunately exists in a world where we just didn't get enough Night Soul. Like she's have you ever heard the term parasitic design? Has that ever come
Yeah,
across your tail?
but go ahead and
Yeah.
explain it for everybody else
Okay.
that maybe hasn't.
Yeah, so parasitic design, at least as I've had it explained to me and as I understand it, is basically I'm going to call it an error in game design where the developer creates a subsystem that doesn't really get built out on. Like it's its own little subsection that doesn't get built on enough, and it kind of becomes its own little tumor sitting on the game. And that's kind of what Night Souls feels like to that it is a system that was implemented into the game with good intention, but as time has gone on, there hasn't been enough of them coming out. It's a Natlan specific thing. So I don't believe any other future non-Natlan characters are going to get Night Souls. So how does that work, with everything else and everyone else? Like you're gonna do what with them? Like Malvika only will function on teams with Night Soul characters, which means that she is locked into whatever the Natlan roster is. And this isn't meant to be a bashing Malvika, but it's just those sort of aspects of her lead a lot to that. Where, and a similar example would be, you mentioned Topaz for you with in Honkai Star Rail, where she's a follow up support. If you don't build a follow up team, Topaz doesn't do anything. Like she's a cool character, but she's just not she's not getting the support. Sparkle, when I mentioned her, she was a character that she's all about SP, and then we haven't really gotten any other character other than Dong Hung, Illuminaire Dong Hung, that is a SP heavy, gotta use them all type character. Like that's
Yeah, there's Blade, but that Blade is like his damage is like on a milk cart. It's missing. Like
yeah.
it's just. But go ahead to your point.
Well, but even Blade, I would say, is he's not really that SP heavy. He's more HP and so forth, and he's fairly HP neutral or SP neutral. But anyways, just there's a lot of ways that like designers, Hoyo, etc., could help relieve some of these issues, but I just don't think that they're going to come about. And I apologize. I kind of went on a, uh, a rabbit trail there, but anyway.
Well, that's fine because I did want to talk about this today because I believe news came out this week about it in terms of, um, we talk about Malvika and how, yeah, is
Mhm.
this just going to be kind of region locked in with Natlan, or is there going to be some interaction with the future game mechanic? Or are they going to do what they're doing with some Star Rail characters in terms of reworking or buffing or tweaking some of the mechanics? Because in Star Rail, I was seeing news about we already heard that like Jing Liu was going to be reworked and buffed. We were going to see Silver Wolf buffs and Kafka buffs, maybe Black Swan. And so I didn't know if you'd heard that news, first of all, and if you had heard that news, if you'd heard anything beyond that as far as what they were. There was some speculation that I heard this week
Mhm.
that I wanted to bounce off you. But first, had you even heard of this news or were aware of this?
Yeah, I was aware that they were going to be doing buffs. I haven't heard specifically what those buffs were going to be. Most of what I have been hearing on the leak side has been in regards to new characters, not updates to old characters.
So yeah, I'm not. I don't know if this is official or unofficial, and obviously we don't have the numbers. I think either way, but I think I was reading a theory, or I was listening to somebody talk about a theory with the Silver Wolf rework. For those that maybe were like me and pulled her because
Mm.
at the beginning of Star Rail, it was like, oh, she's gonna be unreplaceable. She's
Mhm.
gonna be a huge piece with her defense shred and applying weaknesses and such. Well, we found out how long that lasted.
Mhm.
Um, the 4-star light cone we got during her event has carried on farther than she has. But
Yeah.
with these changes, what my understanding of is that it's no longer going to be a single target defense shred. It's no longer going to be a single target um, affinity application. So she can use her ultimate and her skill, and it'll be AOE
Yeah.
defense shred, AOE, weakness application based off of people in your party is the speculation there. And then for Kafka, as a Kafka enjoyer and a dot team
Mhm.
lover, um, dots may be coming back. Like dot teams may be coming back because they're changing how she triggers dots or applies dots in her follow up attack. They're going to change how that works because right now the follow up attack is basically once every 2 turns. And I think what this person was stating was it's going to have 3 charges and she'll just use the 3 charges, one for every follow up attack. And then
Mhm.
charges are maybe reloaded when dots are applied on enemies. And so I'm really interested to see what the numbers will be and actually see what the final kits are.
Mhm.
And also, I didn't hear anything about Jing Liu, which I was really hoping for. She, remember, it was a wonderful, fantastic looking character, and also my best 10 pull I've ever had in any Hoyoverse game ever was on her banner when I got her twice in 110. And so special place in my heart for Jing Liu,
Mhm.
and I would like to see her relevant again because I do have a team that's based around her, but because she has fallen off so hard, I'm excited for them to bring her back. But what are your thoughts on those Silver Wolf tweaks and the Kafka stuff? For those, again, it's just this, it's a bunny trail a little bit from
Mhm.
Buyer's Remorse, but for those of us that maybe were starting to have it because those characters fell off so hard, this is maybe a redemption story arc for those that were feeling a certain sort of way about these characters.
Um, I definitely think that it needed to happen. Um, there's definitely a life cycle to characters, which is why I kind of go, you know, yeah, there are characters that over longer term I've come to regret pulling, but if you can get value from them over a reasonable amount of time, that's going to vary depending on person. It's like, I don't feel bad about it. Silver Wolf is one that I think definitely got hurt the most by the fact that she had such a, at the time, powerful and unique mechanic that you can tell. the developers were sitting down and going like, well, we can't, like, if we add weakness in beds, as an AoE ability, et cetera, it's going to just make the game too easy, et cetera, et cetera. And now I think for most people, if you were to talk to them, they would say HP bloat is a problem more so than weaknesses not aligning and so forth. Um, so I think that was a misread by developers. They were being cautious with something that it turns out really wasn't that big of a deal. Again, especially with Firefly being able to imprint her own element into, onto enemies and so on and so forth. It just became one where, with the break archetype being out there now, it's no big deal anymore. Um, and so I get, I'm excited. I guess the long and the short of it is, I'm excited for the upcoming changes. I think it is necessary. I do also think that we're going to be discussing a character that just came out in Genshin Impact coming up. That she's kind of the another way of trying to boost up characters that are older and less powerful, more indirectly than the more direct method that Hoyo's doing in Honkai Star Rail. So, how.
So I was gonna say you talked about this need to happen, but we're sitting here at what, this is the 2 year anniversary of Star Rail, and these are the first characters that are really being reworked, buffed from their past selves, and Genshin hasn't really done that for those particular. There hasn't been like a character rework update because they've fallen off on the power scale. There was the rework of Lee, but
Yeah.
that was for different reasons. That wasn't power creep or anything like
So
that.
when I say it needed to happen, I think it's because, at least the general consensus seems to be that Genshin was fairly flat for most of its life. That up until we really hit basically Fontaine. I'm going to pin it on Fontaine, maybe Sumeru, but mostly Fontaine. We didn't see these large power spikes that we were seeing right out of the gate with Honkai Star Rail, where Klee wasn't strong. She hasn't been strong for most of the game's life. But if you wanted to, you could clear Abyss with Klee. Not really doable anymore in Genshin Impact. But she was able to hang on at least up through Sumeru, because I did it. I cleared Abyss with Klee during Sumeru. I was able to do it. Now, how effective she actually was on that team, that's maybe another question. But it was doable. Whereas with Star Rail, um, you there are characters that just don't function anymore. Like you're not going to be able to clear Abyss or clear MOC with them at all. Like there are significant power drop offs from patch 1.0 or 1.x characters. Like first year characters just are having a heck of a time trying to keep up. And you kind of did get to the root of I guess my comment or my thought, which is, how long should a character last? And I feel like at least for Hoyoverse games, based off of what Genshin had set as an expectation, I know that Honkai Third Impact has much faster turnaround time on characters, um, but that's not the game that introduced Hoyoverse to the world. Like that was not their big hit. People are going to base their expectations off of Genshin, not off of Third Impact. And based off of Genshin, I think people believed that characters will drop off, but they'd have at least 3 to 4 years of usability. Which, whether that's healthy for the game or not, again, perhaps another question. But I think for most people, they kind of expected if their 1.0 characters to be viable at least through to the end of now 3.0, maybe into 4.0. That's the sentiment I see. I don't know. Have you seen other sentiments, out
No,
there, or?
I think that's sound logic in terms of, yeah, the expectation or the precedent was set with what they do with Genshin, because while yes, maybe there were some of us that did play, Honkai Impact Third, that wasn't the thing, like I said, that put Hoyoverse or MiHoYo at the time on the
Mhm.
map. That was Genshin. So if Genshin's setting that precedent of, yeah, 3 years of a character being relevant, being having strong synergies with different characters and newer characters that are coming out, we were less likely to kind of feel that buyer's remorse, on a character. Whereas, yeah, with Star Rail, the relevance of a character is a much shorter time window because like I said, we're sitting here at the second anniversary now, and
Hmm.
we have characters that have completely fallen by the wayside in terms of anything, any role really, from DPS, from damaging, being a hyper carry to support to tank. So you have a character like Luocha. It's completely fallen. I mean,
Yeah,
he's been replaced by any number of healers that are. You have because you have Ho-Oh, you have Lingsha, you have. I mean, hell, you have Gallagher.
yeah,
Who's not even a limited 5-star banner who does the job arguably better than Luocha.
yeah,
So yeah, the precedent being set for 3 years and then having kind of that dark contrast of man, Luocha was relevant for maybe a year and then got replaced, or somebody like Jing Yuan who
yeah.
came out as one of the first characters, relevant for a little bit, fell off, had a bit of a resurgence later on, and it has now kind of fallen back into a secondary damaging role, type thing.
Yeah, and just not even worth talking about, and like nobody's going to
It
be.
just it ultimately, yeah, it kind of goes back to I guess put a little bow tie on the buyer's remorse conversation to help reduce your chances of feeling that buyer's remorse. You really have to look at what are you trying to get out of the game and what are you okay with and what are you not okay with. So if you're okay with that chance that yeah, this character, this damage character is going to get outscaled at some point in the near future because damaging characters typically sell better because we want to do bigger and bigger numbers,
Yeah,
right? And you just have to plan and be okay with that. Otherwise, you're gonna make yourself more susceptible to having that buyer's remorse by going after a character and then just 6 months later them not being the best at that particular role. And
irrelevant, no longer worth it.
yeah, and I think Star Rail has this problem that's becoming more and more prevalent. Like you said, with the HP bloat, numbers having to get bigger and bigger. So that's why I'm interested to see the numbers on the reworks of these older characters, because if they do it well and they do it right, then there's potential to rework other older characters and bring them back into the spotlight. So those of us that maybe have that remorse on purchasing some of those older characters won't have that so much in it.
Yeah,
And I can't speak to ZZZ. We're not even, I think, at the first anniversary yet. It's
yeah,
still
that should
very
be
early on.
just around the corner because it came out
Yeah,
July 4th. So
yeah, it should be coming up, but we're not there yet. So it's a little too early to get a read like we have on Star Rail after 2 years, or like we have on Genshin after 4 years now, right? Or almost 5 years, maybe coming up. I don't remember. But
we should be coming up on 5 or 6 at this point.
yeah, so that's what I would say to that. To just kind of put a nice little bow tie on buyer's remorse. But Steve, you have any final closing thoughts?
Um, yeah, I guess my final thoughts on it is that it's going to happen to you. That's the unfortunate part of it is that you're at some point we all are going to experience. It's just how you deal with it, I guess. Learn how I learned to love the bomb, as it were. Was it Doctor Strange or How I Learned to Love the Bomb? Um, we have to come to terms with it. It'll bite us all eventually. But we should all do our best to avoid it as well. But yeah, that's it, I guess.
Super optimistic outlook. Love to end on that note.
Ah,
But we do
well,
have other things to talk about. So you had referenced a new character in Genshin Impact. We also have a few events, I believe, to chat about as well. So Steve, I'll let you jump into that here next.
sounds good. So the only events that we have this week is for Zenless Zone Zero, ZZZ. The event is Savor the Flavor Citywide Delivery. It's the food truck event where you basically have to provide people with the food that they order or that they request and deliver it to them or select it from a menu and then deliver it to them. It's pretty quick, pretty bog standard as far as an event goes. At this point in time, you shouldn't have to wait or worry about needing to, have sections of it open up. It should all be available at this point. And yeah, go out and get those free. They're not primos in ZZZ or Starjade. I can't remember what the currency is on that one.
Bro.
Polychrome. It's Polychrome. And it all defaults to primos in my head, so I have to try and do a translation to whichever game it is. Regardless, yeah, Polychrome should be available. It's good fun. But yeah, that's the only event this week in Hoyoverse.
All right, and yeah, like you said, that is pretty straightforward, easy event to do. Each task shouldn't probably take more than 2 minutes. Essentially, even if you don't remember what they ordered, the hints are pretty obvious as to what you should be picking event. But moving over to characters, we did reference her earlier in the episode when we were talking about our buyer's remorse section and character buffs and changes. But the new character, Escoffier or Escoffier, let's say
It's French, and we're
I
notoriously
would say
bad
it's
at it.
French, like a French chef type look. So Escoffier, she is the new 5-star unit in Genshin Impact. She is a polearm user who is in the cryo element, and she does have a couple of different builds that are available technically. However, I will say she is gonna be best served as a sub DPS unit in a freeze team. This is going to be her best role. She is going to essentially be one of the mainstays in a freeze composition, just because of all of the utility she provides with uh, not only offensive buffs for the team, but also some healing as well for the team. So she's going to be best served in that, but I'll still talk a little bit about her other role in other team compositions. In terms of her build, as is typical with characters, they're all going to have their signature weapon, right? But perhaps you are like me and are low on the pole econ in Genshin, but maybe you have some other options, which would be something like the Staff of Homa, Engulfing Lightning, if you're looking at 5-star options. So that would be, what was that? Hu Tao and I think Raiden Shogun's, if I'm not mistaken, signature weapon. And then for free to play options, or rather 4-star options, you have Prospector's Drill and Tamayu. I'll say that again because
Yeah.
I'll get it wronger. As far as her build type, best artifact sets, Golden Troop is going to be kind of what we're aiming for, but also Blizzard Strayer would it be acceptable? Either one for the 4-piecer. Maybe you have a lot of Blizzard Strayer from farming it early on in the game, right? When Ganyu was the thing, or maybe you just have a lot of Golden Troops because of what's recently occurred in the game. But either one of those 4-piece sets will be fine. For the Sands, you're going to be looking at attack percentage or energy recharge, Goblet, cryo damage, or attack percentage, Circlet, again, crit rate or crit damage, and looking at substats of crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, and energy recharge. An example team for freeze teams would be maybe something like her, Farina, Shenhe, and and Ayaka Misato, right? Would be options for her. Or maybe you can pair her with again Farina, but maybe you have Nuvolette and Lolly, kind of be another type of example of a freeze team for her. So another option would be not building her so much as a sub DPS, but making her basically be as a full support. Again, still recommended for the freeze team. And similar, Golden Troop would be an acceptable artifact set, but instead of the Blizzard Strayer, Noblesse Oblige would be the set to look for here. And you'd be looking at energy recharge or attack on the Sands. Goblet and Circlet would be attack percentage, or on the Circlet, also crit rate, crit damage. But you're more focusing on energy recharge in this particular build, just because you want to have her burst up as often as possible. So that would be the secondary option. But again, mainstay, building her in a freeze team as a sub DPS is going to be what we're ultimately looking for. Steve, did you have any thoughts on her? Did you give her trial a go? Or are you looking at polling for her? What were your thoughts?
So I was actually looking to potentially pull for her. I will say that I'm going to do a shout out to Vars too, who does Genshin content as well as other stuff on YouTube, because he brought up a point on about I'm not going to pronounce that character's name, Chef, about the chef uh, that I hadn't really thought about. In that she's actually causing some concern with a number of cryo player fans, I guess. That basically because she is such a strong character that provides such a strong buff to, freeze teams, freeze characters, that basically there's concern that future cryo characters will have to be designed with her to, taking her into account. What is that going to mean for their power levels or the direction of cryo as an element? Those been listening to us might remember that we talked about Cryo last season in our elemental breakdown, and sort of the state of Cryo being not that great. And while this seems to be a step in the right direction, it does also, bode potential concern around the idea that future characters might be either weakened to account for the fact that for the players who do have the chef, or might even be designed explicitly not to work with her, and that she might be designed as basically a catch-up mechanic for older characters like Worsley, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Those characters that because they have fallen behind, she is designed to help catch them up, and then any future cryo characters might not even be designed to work with her, especially considering there are potential cryo characters very close around the corner. We're coming up on Snezna, so what direction the cryo element is going to take is a little bit up in the air. So everything I've heard is that she is, at least at the moment, a very good value character, but who knows based off of what comes in the pipeline. But yeah, that was it.
That's true. Yeah, we do have Snezhnaya right around the corner, so maybe Cryo will be seeing a little bit of a revival in terms of usage, or maybe some fun new mechanics will be on the way. But looking to other Gacha news, so outside the Hoyoverse realm, I mentioned it last week with Brown Dust 2, their Goblin Slayer collaboration did officially start. So that is ongoing currently with a couple characters coming in. So they are giving out Goblin Slayer, the Goblin Slayer character itself for free. Just by logging into the game, you'll get one copy of him. By doing the event story and the event story on various difficulty levels, you will get additional copies of him and therefore be able to max him out. Currently, the two of the other three characters that are in the collab are on a banner, and that's going to be there's an archer girl, and I apologize, I don't know the names. I'm not familiar with the IP. And then there's also a priestess girl as well on the banner too. And then there will be another, I believe, another priestess type character in the coming weeks. That's going to be another one. But that is ongoing now currently. So if you are a fan of Brown Dust 2, or you are a fan of the Goblin Slayer IP, you can come on over, check out Brown Dust 2 and give that one a go. Other news, Outer Plane, they just announced that they are getting ready to celebrate their 2-year anniversary. So that is upcoming here in the near future. So for those that are unfamiliar with Outer Plane, this is essentially it's Epic 7. If you're familiar with that play style of a 4-character party, turn-based style RPG, but Outer Plane getting ready to celebrate their 2-year anniversary. Other news, we have Mirren Star Legends pre-registration is available. Looks like it's going to be a July release based off of what the Apple Store is saying. So Mirren Star Legends coming out in July. Pre-registration is available. For those that this one maybe slipped through the radar, it is I believe it is being brought to us by Crunchyroll. So for Crunchyroll, obviously saying that has that invokes some feelings with players. I would imagine there are still some that are bitter over them canceling the global version of Princess Connect, or Precone, essentially Princess Connect, all those years ago. So just be aware that the Crunchyroll division for Gacha games does a reputation. But Mirren Star Legends itself looks like it's going to be very similar in terms of play style, turn-based RPG to Honkai Star Rail. Again, with some flashy graphics and skill cutscenes. So if you like that type of playstyle, you can check it out in July. And finally, in other news, on the pre-registration front, we had referenced this a few months ago, but time has flown by, and it is now upon us that oh man, I'm going to butcher this one. Uma Musume Pretty Derby is coming out June 25th, it looks like. This is going to have a Steam client as well, so if you prefer to play gacha games on your computer, you can check out the Steam client for this one, put it on your wish list now. And this one, if we remember, is a very popular gacha game going on in Japan. We had mentioned them in the news because they were part of a group sponsoring some of the various, I believe it was the Belmont Stakes, or the Breeders' Cup, excuse me. It was the
Oh yeah, it was
Breeders'
the
Cup.
Breeders' Cup. Yeah.
Which for horse racing, because this game is waifus, but they're horse girls, and you raise them and then you race them. Again, very popular in Japan right now. So there's a lot of gameplay videos out there for it, but that's coming global at the end of June. So be sure to check that one out. I will probably be checking that out for the giggles. We'll see if the gameplay is up my alley and it stays in the rotation. But I will say I'll try it out for the content and give you all my review there at the end of June. We do want to thank you guys for joining us this week, though. Let us know, down below in the comments, have you guys experienced buyer's remorse in Gacha games, or whether it be inside of the Hoyo verse realm or out, or maybe if you haven't experienced buyer's remorse, how are you avoiding it? How are you doing so well at avoiding it? If you did enjoy the episode, though, and you'd like to show your support, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. You can always email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com if you have any questions or suggestions for the show. We also have the link to the Discord down in the description, so you can join us over there for other news, game nights, and content notifications. Be sure to join us next week when we debate Steve's theory that 4-star units are completely useless in Hoyoverse games. But until then, keep gaming.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate.